So what do you want to tell me you want to stand?
Good afternoon. Just having a brief press briefing in advance of our Ardèche, and to say we're looking forward to it. I think it's a very good programme. Key issues such as justice, housing, health, the two-tier economy, climate change. I'm delighted that Colm Eastwood, the leader of the SDLP, will be addressing and is on the panel in relation to the crucial issue of Brexit. And I think we have a good combination of obviously members of our front bench, but also invited expertise from different disciplines and so on. So I think it'll make for a very interesting Ardèche for our delegates and for our members, and notwithstanding the piece in terms of the centenary being organised by Deputy Eamon O'Keefe, and then the Lemass tapes and Ronan McGreevy making a presentation on those. So it'll be an opportunity and a chance for us to stand back from the daily robust engagement of politics and to reflect somewhat, and also to listen and engage with the delegates and with the members in terms of the local elections and the European elections, and whatever else people may want to discuss in the fullness of time. So, do
you want to give us your initial reaction to the Brexit document?
Well, I mean, first of all, we welcome the fact that it's published. We would have preferred it earlier. I think a lot of it is straightforward stuff to try and copper fasten and underpin the basic between Britain and Ireland, because we have very close links with Britain. I was just, if you go through the corridor there in the centenary and listen to Tony Blair's speech, you're reminded he actually dwells in that issue of the close links between Britain and Ireland. So the point being, we do need a legislative underpinning of all of that in the context of a no-deal Brexit. The key point I would make, however, is I think politicians and the political parties who were opposing us, and Sinn Féin who were calling for a general election, and for me to pull the plug, we wouldn't be in a position to enact this legislation if I didn't take the position I took, and the party didn't take the position that we took before Christmas to continue with the confidence in supply. So there's a lot of hot air out there from some quarters about preparing for Brexit and being ready for Brexit. The reality is, again, Fianna Fáil had to take the hard decision before Christmas. In my view, the correct decision to continue with confidence in supply, give the government space in terms of the negotiations around Brexit, but also to prepare for any eventualities.
Micheál, from that, there's been some disquiet amongst backbenchers about your decision. How do you plan to address what you described as yourself as a hard decision amongst the grassroots members this weekend? And how do you, I suppose, how are you going to bring them across your way of thinking?
With 3 points I would make on that. First of all, at the meeting before Christmas, it was unanimous at that particular party meeting. No, some weren't at that meeting, I acknowledge that. And I do take soundings myself with my own TDs. And in terms of talking to the members of the party, and I've spoken to a lot, of course there's a lot of concern because, and there's been a lot of challenges these last 3 months, namely the National Children's Hospital, the cervical check decision by the Minister to offer a free smear test. And I've been pursuing this now for 5 weeks because I think the absence of any clinical evidence or any medical evidence affects public health. One has to take any decision in relation to a screening programme or in relation to public health on sound medical grounds. And there's important lessons to be learned from this debacle. There were no medical advices that I can see that were given to the Minister in advance of that decision. And so our members are quite rightly angry about that, and then the real failure to get delivery on housing as well. Many members would say to us in terms of their young sons and young daughters, their capacity to rent at an affordable rate, that prices are simply too high. When they go to college, for example, they're hit with a whole range of expenses from accommodation to the rental issues, and then young couples. So there is a lot of anger out there towards the government, and the anger to it, illustrations of lack of confidence, as we've seen in the National Children's Hospital, when you look at the fact that the two ministers apparently weren't talking to each other for 3 months on this, and there was a breach of trust there. And also look at the most recent development in terms of the metro. I mean, the National Development Plan was published a year ago. They toured the country. They said it was going to be Metro South. And yesterday, Shane Ross announces that he's never going to impose that level of disruption. But what was he thinking of when he put it in? So one gets the sense they're making this up as they go along. that they don't really know what they're doing, and that creates a pressure then. It is difficult to watch that level of incompetence unfold.
They sound like the reasons not to.
The key point is Brexit, obviously. I mean, and I think people do get that, and I think the general public get it, that Brexit overrides and trumps those issues.
How are you going to explain that's a lot of extra failures that you see
I don't have to explain those to the public or to the membership, but should they understand them?
Yeah,
I don't have to explain
it
the
away in terms of when you're going to list a long list of things, and then people are going to ask you, well, why aren't you going to plug that?
Well, sorry, I mean the imminent threat of Brexit. Brexit is probably the severest threat in over a decade to Irish society. It fundamentally changes the order of relationships between Britain and Europe and Britain and Ireland for the first time in 50 years. The agri-food industry has been into us and into the government saying it's really Armageddon for them and for the beef sector. Bad enough for the beef sector as it is, as you know. But if a no deal... Well, I would refer back to my speech in the Dáil before Christmas. Things have actually got worse since then, and that speech was in the context of a fairly incoherent situation in the British Parliament. It's actually got worse. But you can't just extend confidence supply in the peaceful basis. You can't say, I'm extending it for next month and not the month after. So I stand by what I said in the Dáil before December, that we would give the government space throughout 2019 to deal with Brexit. And even if, and we don't know what's going to unfold, there may be a deal before the end of March, and maybe pushed out to June. But even what we might term a soft Brexit has implications. Things have to be worked out that haven't been fully worked out yet, in my view, in terms of the new relationships that unfold. So it's a very, very fundamental issue, and that is why, unlike Sinn Féin, who collapsed the executive over 2 years ago, who presided over no government in Northern Ireland, no parliament in Northern Ireland, no voice for the anti-Brexit majority in the north in Westminster, no voice in the north. I certainly was not going to go down that route and create a chaotic and politically unstable situation in Dublin.
How do you feel about
Gavin?
Dara said on Morning Ireland this morning that you obviously want to try and negotiate another budget. You said on Live in the 8 yesterday that you don't foresee there being elections until sometime in the spring next year. Are you committed to ensuring the passage of a budget, or merely just to negotiating one and seeing how well you do?
Well, you wouldn't start negotiating unless you wanted to get a budget through. That would be the
But if you can't
logical
negotiate
follow-through.
a kind of a
well, I can't get into every. I mean, there will be obviously tough negotiations around that budget. But I said last December that we wanted to facilitate that we're committed to facilitating a further budget, and we're giving the government space throughout 2019, and that remains the position.
When you had the regional confidence and supply, though, you committed to the passage of 3 budgets, and what I'm asking is, are you committed to the passage of a 4th, or just to seeing how well you can do?
No, we're committed to facilitating a budget, but obviously that will be negotiations. Just I said the same thing about last year's budget, well in advance of it as well. When you might recall when the Taoiseach was creating instability around his own government at the time, I made it clear that we were going to honour our commitments in that regard. And I think, in fairness, we've been constructive in terms of the confidence and supply. We've been honourable. We've gone by our word, and that will continue.
Do you share Dara Cleary's frustration with confidence and supply?
Of course, it's not so much with confidence and supply, but it's within the inability of this government to deliver, to follow through the soundbite, to follow through the announcement, and they consistently miss targets. In broadband, for example, 7 years now since the government announced that they were going to bring broadband to rural Ireland. The contract hasn't been signed, and we've no indication yet, or no clarity from government as to what they're going to do now. You may recall at the time of the resignation of Dennis Naughton, there was some indication we'd know in early January in terms of the government decision on that, and we're nowhere near that yet, it appears. So that is frustrating, and that creates challenges for us. But our job then is to win more seats in the next general election. We want to lead a government in the next election. We want to go into government with like-minded parties, smaller parties, who share a similar policy platform. But to do that, we have to win more seats. Now, we did very well the last time. We more than doubled our seats. We went from 20 to 44. We're going to win more seats after the next general election. We've worked across the country. We would surprise people in some constituencies like we did the last time. You know, I'm conscious that people look at. I remember all the debate before 2016, and people saying probably thought Fianna Fáil would be in the low 30s after the election. That's not the way it turned out, and it's my view that the same will happen after the next election, in terms of the number of seats that we will win, and maybe others will win as well.
Bihal Kishna Stable just in Rakhtiak the Novan Rakhtiak the File Sheet the Novan Dolak for will go on Ama on Rakhtiak and a fur trade in the Rastus. I was a worker sauce the North Shore to the Scott, Pobble Material or Daw Haved and Torin Mariola and Rakhtiak.
So it's going to scale nach Rev on Rakhtiak File Sheet Hannafin, Tasha Dana, agus tá is toch anach down lastig den Rakhtiak Shin. Now, could it's more there? Gwyn yn siarad le gynnar ryddi o'n til agus crym ffordd o sort of gwyl bila o'n yn ish fi mor cymad yn brwyr yn realtus ond bila siya aisiw ni slwa agus mar shinde agus nil siya sylir cadaf eg tarlu yn chwrn da mar rydych yn meg no deal begs ag tacht Jeremy na Marta ac go generalta is talk to gwyl yn Rakhtiak down Tom Weedness sauce Coi Brew, leis an realtas agus leis na parte eile chun an Rakhtiak seo ar cuir trí na dála.
Mihol, some Fianna Fáil TDs are saying that there will be a general election before this year is out. Does that mean that there's a lack of discipline in the Fianna Fáil parliamentary party, and do those TDs need to be brought into line?
First of all, I think some TDs said the same thing last year. May had said it the year before. And many people said it even in the first year of confidence and supply, and people in Leinster House. In the modern era, and we all evolve and we all change, parliamentary parties work differently nowadays, it seems to me. I have conversations with TDs as well, you do. Sometimes the conversations I have don't tally with the conversations that you may have, but that's probably maybe the nature of modern parliamentary politics. So I'm quite relaxed about that. I think, you know, I reminded my colleagues of some conversations we were having last year as well on matters of this kind, and how opinions fluctuated in the matter of weeks. And I recall even before Christmas when we made the announcement of confidence supply, the week or two afterwards, many TDs coming back saying the public agree with you on this one. So look, pressures come on in Leinster House. Undoubtedly, the anger on TDs would have felt the anger on the doorstep in relation to the Children's Hospital. People are very angry about that, and I understand that. I was out with Fiona last week in Kildare, and we got a bit of that ourselves. Members were saying it to us. So that really struck a chord with the public, and that obviously reflects back onto TDs. And I understand where TDs are coming from. I understand their frustrations and so on. But then a lot of TDs who may not, you know, talk as much, maybe with journalists or whatever. They're all quietly saying, you know, this is the only decision on Brexit. Any TDs said that to me.
Can I just quickly ask about at the Ardèche before the vote that was on abortion? Are you expecting to get any pushback from members in terms of your stance on it, I suppose, last year? You know, in light of, I suppose, the different viewpoint that came out of that Ardèche?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered that ground. I think people in the party have communicated their views to me on that already. Others have too. I mean, I was talking earlier this morning where, I mean, 50% of the Fianna Fáil voter base would have voted for the 8th Amendment. It was our three members of that, Lee Kelleher, Lisa Chambers and Ned O'Sullivan, who were pivotal in actually arriving at the template that eventually was voted on by the public in the subsequent legislation. Other parties, you know, I've said this a couple of times now to you in different interviews. I mean, I was always struck by that. There was about 26 silent Fine Gael TDs and no one bothered asking about their views on this, and they melted away into the quiet darkness, and no one bothered asking them. More people were a bit more active, I get that, and they were a bit more in the public domain. But it's striking that even Sinn Féin couldn't support the compromise solution that emerged from that Oireachtas committee. Sometimes in the history of that period be written, I think maybe you might get a more balanced and nuanced view of where different politicians in different across the political spectrum are.
Yeah, in relation to Brexit, I suppose the preparedness for Brexit a month out, are you satisfied, or Fianna Fáil satisfied that the government are doing enough in terms of meeting commitments, in terms of hiring enough customs officers as much as they said they would?
No, I don't think we are where the Dutch are in that respect. And I think in terms of a no-deal Brexit, I don't think we're prepared. And certainly there's growing anxiety in the agri-food sector and in the beef sector about what will happen if there is a no-deal Brexit. So I don't think we're adequately prepared for a no-deal Brexit.
And where does the blame fall?
I think the government had a view for quite a long time that we wouldn't be where we are right now. The government perhaps thought that they'd have a deal. Earlier I think they thought they'd have it all locked up before Christmas, certainly in the autumn period. I think it began to dawn that the prospect of a no deal was a very real one a bit late in the day. But we will cooperate in any way we can. But I think the area of state aids, the area of how do we support via intervention, for example, in terms of the agricultural industry and farmers, these are very real concrete issues that need to be ironed out in advance of a no deal, and how we keep the supply chains going, how we keep Irish food on British supermarket shelves. These are very practical issues. How we get the land bridge, what's the situation there, and above all, we don't have an answer to the question as to what happens on the end of March in a no deal Brexit on the border. There is no clear explanation. I've asked the teacher about 6 times in that regard. There's no clear explanation to that. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. 9 o'clock.
Sure.
9 o'clock. Right, you're early.
9:30. Or 9:30.
That's all right. Yeah. Happy with today's. All right. When the leader, you whipped them into line. Outrageous dictatorial behaviour.